Ladies and gentlemen, it's Neon Velocity, and I'm going to be talking about Horde Siege in Gears of War E-Day and how I have some concerns as we are moving forward to launch with the game currently. Horde Siege is a great take on Horde. I actually do enjoy this mode a ton, and because I enjoy it so much, I have concerns about it. Whereas with Horde, you know what you're getting. You're getting usually a Frenzy or a variant of Horde, and it's going to be 1 through 20, 1 through 10, or 1 through 50 waves, or whatever it is that you want it to be, and you master the map and you are on your way, and congratulations. But then you have Horde Siege, which changed the game and brought in the extraction feel and the mobility feel and the team squad feel of 12 players, and I think this was a great change on the surface. However, I still have concerns about where this is headed. Generally speaking, the comments I've seen on my channel and even on Twitter and other outlets is, where is Classic Horde? People really want Horde Classic, where you can go waves 1 through 50 like you could in the old days. And I say old days like Gears 5 and past. However, you do have a new variant of Horde Classic, and it's just 1 through 10, and you're defending the rig. I don't think that resonated with the community, so I do wonder and hopefully hope that if that is something that is not too much of a developmental risk or whatever the case may be from a development standard, maybe that's something they can add in a future season along with additional classes like they talked about. This video is really going to be focusing on, where do the current Horde classes sit, some of my recommendations and changes that they can implement, and where do we go from here. So let's talk about the Horde classes as a whole. In my prior video, I mentioned that the Breacher class was probably by far one of the weakest classes in the current game, and I'm gonna start there. It still feels by far the weakest, if not a snail's pace to level the class. It just doesn't feel fun to play until you get the incinerator gun or unlock at level 9, and then from there, it feels fun because you can get in the thick of it, use your skills, and you can do some actual damage. The reason I mentioned that level 9 unlock is because up until level 9, the Breacher has the Gnasher, which is a staple of the Gears of War franchise, and it is by far the weakest weapon in Horde Siege by far. And it's just, there's nothing about it that does any type of damage. You could literally go up to an enemy and shoot them 2 or 3 times, and it may not even give them upon that. It doesn't really do too much damage. So I really would like to see the Breacher class get some maybe rework, or the Gnasher be able to actually get some mods out of the gate to bring it up to speed, or the Gnasher get increased damage from the base value. Something about that class just doesn't feel right. I do think that as time goes on and you get past that level 9 kind of threshold and we move up into the higher levels of the class, which we obviously wouldn't be able to play or know about right now, but it does seem that that class has some potential to be similar to an infiltrator. But if we're going to start out with a Gnasher, it needs some mods that actually inspire some type of damage or some type of defensibility mechanic, if that's the way that that class is meant to be played. I think ultimately the class ability for the Breacher has potential, but that starting grind is just absolutely terrible, and I really do hope that the Coalition can find a way to make those first few levels a little bit more enjoyable. The next class up that's a little bit on the weaker side is the Assault class. The reason I bring this up is that it's a typical Assault class. It's more using that Lancer or Hammer Burst, and it definitely seems the class is going to benefit more from the Lancer and using it to execute enemies. That Lancer, by the way, is absolutely disgusting. When a larger boss like a Boomer has less than 50% health, you can chainsaw them and get that execution, and it kills them immediately. Whereas before, you're never really going to benefit from, or you would never have the chance to actually execute or chainsaw a Boomer. So that's pretty cool. But once you get to level 9, you get the Ripper weapon for the Assault class, and honestly that weapon is great, but you run through ammo very quickly. So unless there's a like unlimited resupply type thing going on for that, or you're buying ammo consistently, I just don't know where that class goes in the long term. I think it has potential with the Sonic Disruptor to do some great crowd control and killing enemies, but I don't really know what we don't know. And at this point, it feels a little bit on the weekend with some high upside potential down the road. Third class is the Marksman class. I've spent the most time with this class, and the long shot on all the difficulties that I was able to play in, rookie, infantry, and commander. So this is just a very strong class. The class has a relatively low risk of death because you're playing from afar, you're using the long shot, and you're able to get some great headshot damage, which does some insane critical damage down the road. Even when I was playing on commander difficulty, which I did upload that video to the channel, unless it was like a reaver or something that is coming from the sky and blows up and is like doing area damage on you, I really wasn't ever in harm's way. And then the ultimate ability, being able to pulse and see enemies, is a great take on what we've already seen from Gears 4 and Gears 5. But I'm really not a fan of the mods on the sniper or the Breechshot, and I think that that's because there are going to be better ones down the road, hopefully. But at least for now, idea of the mods for both of those weapons are just not there. Having a 3x to 8x scope, I don't see the benefit to that when most of the time you're going to be a little bit up closer with the sniper than that far back. I just feel like maybe the mod system isn't for me. The more I think about it, just wonder if there's a chance that that Marksman class is pretty much tapped out once you reach level 9, and with the long shot and the breacher, where does that go from there? The best class by far is the medic class. It's super OP to start. You have the ultimate ability, being able to heal yourself and heal others, and then at level 9 you get the gut puncher. And if you did not get to use the gut puncher, being able to close e-holes, do explosive and fire damage, and cause large damage as a whole is just where the class shines, which is a complete departure from what we saw in Gears 5, where the medic class was really just one of the most useless classes in my opinion in Gears 5. So I fully expected walking in to seeing the medic class be super weak, but it's definitely by far the strongest, and it's not even close. I do wonder if this is intentional or where does this class head, but it's a very memorable class. There's really no complaints. I feel like if we're going to have the medic at this stance, then the assault and breacher class need to be brought up to where the medic class is, at least once you reach level 9. Those classes are so far back, it's not even close. This game ultimately feels like it has some of that action RPG style from like maybe Diablo, and I'm not going down the path of how Diablo differs from this, but the idea is that you have meta, and then you have semi-good, decent, and just terrible, and that's the tier list that I'm kind of saying here. Is the medic is definitely the meta, Marksman is great and serviceable, Breacher has a chance because once you get the incinerator, the weapon damage on the incinerator compared to the Gnasher is just absolutely insane. And then you have the assault class that's kind of just out there. I don't know if that class can be brought up to the damage that the medic has. So that's kind of talking about the classes. I'm going to shift into some general recommendations that I have at this point. I would like to see some type of in-game server message for when invasion events are going to occur. I also think that the weapon mods generally feel underwhelming for some weapons and great for others. I kind of alluded to this previously, is that, like, for example, the Gnasher is by far the weakest weapon. It has no weapon mods that really make it stand out. I think maybe doing something like a bleed damage, or just something to make it a little bit more useful as you're progressing through the leveling of your class. Just something to bring it more. It just really seems like the Coalition had some thoughtful intentions for some weapons, but then just omitted others completely. The other thing is that modifiers in the game don't really feel overly impactful, at least at this current state. So I'm not sure if that is something that needs to be reworked or rethought about, but it just doesn't seem to drive home any change that is impactful. The other thing is the party size or the party system and how the gameplay works with team play. So I'm going to talk a little bit about team play, and then I'll move into the party sizes. Team play currently just feels soulless. You have 12 players on the map usually, but you're never really interacting with each other unless there's an extraction occurring. You're not really working with together. It just feels like you're very spread apart and that you're just not trying to work together in any cohesive way. I would like to see where there's no rolling lobbies, for example, all 12 players load in at the same time. That way they can all work together on multiple objectives instead of their own individual team objectives, and they're all playing on the same difficulty. If you can queue up as a party of 12, for example, maybe that's more for private matches or something. Maybe that's where that comes in. But I think this is something they should at least consider, because it just feels like there's very limited interaction with those squads. You might run into them occasionally, but there's really nothing going on that says, hey, come help me and help what I'm trying to do, because they don't know what you're trying to do usually, except kill enemies. When we talk about party size, I would like them to come up with an idea of how to implement all 12 players on the same team. So that way you could do maybe a raid from Destiny or some type of MMO style raid where you're all going and trying to do something greater than what we're currently doing. And maybe that's something that the coalition has down the road and they just wanted to test it out. I don't think that's the case. So I would like to see something that allows for the players to get rewards for doing something greater than just going in, doing your objectives, and extracting. The perks in the game generally don't feel very impactful either. I think when we first all started playing, we were probably spending our energy on perks. As time went on, we realized, what's the point of that? I can just use that to put energy into reloading my guns or buying the things that I need to inflict more damage so I can complete the waves or the objective or whatever I'm trying to do a little bit easier. So I anticipate that the perk system needs to be reworked. Also, legendary epic perks that drop on the map and everybody's running towards them, I don't see the impact or the notification of what it is and where it goes. I think it's a little confusing as to what it's actually doing for you. I think that's something that needs to be addressed. This next part is going to be a little bit about weapon parts and weapon mods. I think when you're playing in the game modes currently, you can get a little bit excessive on how many weapon parts you can extract with at such a low level. And I think with that comes a thought of, if I can get all these weapon parts very quickly, how long is this going to sustain me? So I anticipate that the coalition is going to reduce the number of weapon parts you can get upon an extraction, or maybe cap it out per difficulty or something like that. But to that end, the weapon mod system I think is great in theory, but I'm still not sold on it as being the replacement to skill cards from Gears 5. I think they spent so much time from Gears 4 to Gears 5 with the development of skill cards that they actually did end up in a fairly great place. I just don't know if the weapon mods are going to be the solution to the replacement of skill cards. I think skill cards just really had great potential. You had multiple levels, you had to get multiple cards to level them up. Whereas with weapon mods, you get them, you unlock them, and that's unlocked for all the weapons for all your classes. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I just don't know if that's driving the same type of customization and feeling that you would with different variants of skill cards, because you can mix and match those skill cards and do something that maybe someone else wouldn't do, or you can modify it a little bit to your liking. And maybe there's a lot that we don't know about because we haven't been able to go to level 30. So that's something there. The other thing I would say is that I'm concerned as it relates to the classes is that once you get to level 30 and you get all these armor mods and weapon mods unlocked, what happens next? There's no leaderboard system currently. Maybe this will be in the game through the war journal, but there's no leaderboard. There's no rewards. There's really nothing hooking you into the future. So I would love to see the coalition implement something that keeps players looped in as time goes on, because I can definitely see that the player count for what would be people playing Horde for the first time and getting hooked into it might get a little bored or stale of it. There just needs to be a little bit of something to keep the player hooked in. So these are just my high-level thoughts on Horde Siege. I think ultimately I do think Horde Siege is in a great place as it stands, but any tweaks that we can get to preserve the longevity of the mode is welcome in my opinion.